2023 онд Монгол улс Британи, Хамтлагааны нэгдсэн хаан тулсын хооронд дипломат харилцаа тогтоосны 60 жилийн зохиогч битэй холбогдуулан Элчин сайдын яам Британи хамгаалчдын холбоо G-Studio-ийн хамтран HV 7 хоног төтмийн оюун дүгэршгүй подкастыг та сонсож байна. Подкастын зорилго нь Британи улсад ажиллаж амьдарч буй үеийн монголчуудын төлөөлөл, Монголтой холбоотой төвлөрийн үйл ажиллагаа явуулдаг Британи иргэдийн төлөөлөлтэй ярилцаж тэдний мэддэг төрөлхөөс үзэгч сонсогчтойгоо хуваалцахад иршнэ.
My special guest, our good old friend Майкл Ормистон. Lots of Mongolians know you do throat singing in our cultural events and all sorts of events. Also, I remember and you organized the first Khoomii conference, international conference.
Yes, we did.
About 10 years ago?
10, 15 years ago.
15 years
like
ago, so yeah. So people, I guess your industry people know you very well because you're the one of the well-known researcher and about throat singing. And so tell me about, how did you connect with the throat singing? I know you went to Mongolia in 1992 first.
1993.
1993, yeah. And so,
well,
your experience.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It's great to share some of my experiences. Well, in the 1980s, I was working in computing, and
completely different.
But I had a bit of money, and so I used to go to loads of concerts. And at that time in the UK, it was great. There was music from all over the place. So I get a listings magazine and Bulgarian music. So you could see and hear a concert of Bulgarian music. And one day there was in the listing Mongolian music and dance ensemble. So I thought, I'll go along to that. And that was in 1988 at the Commonwealth Institute, which is no longer there. So I went along to this concert and I started hearing Mongolian music, which is great. And then I heard this person do this singing, and it was quite remarkable. It's sort of, as I later found out, it's called Khoomii singing, or Khoomii actually, or Khoomii lock. And it sort of, I felt it here very strongly. I felt it here very strongly. Sorry, microphone. And then I was, what is he singing? What's going on? And it inspired me. I bought the cassette that was at the concert. There were no CDs there. There was no internet to look up in 1988. I bought a vinyl, and I went back home and I started practicing. I didn't know what I was doing.
I see. You're just trying to copy it.
But I was so inspired. They said it was a bit like a Jew's harp, so I bought myself a tomohorba, an English version of it, and wanted to go to Mongolia. But I had to sort of change my life, basically, and I started reading books about Mongolia. I tried to contact people in the UK connected with Mongolia, and eventually there was the Anglo-Mongolian Society, Judith Norby. I contacted her and I joined it, and then I found out I had to get an invite to Mongolia as an individual, and it took about 3 years to give up my job. So I gave up my job, spent my savings. I got an invite from an artist and his wife, I can't remember their names, and got to Mongolia in 1993. And then they very kindly hosted me. I rented a flat in Ulaanbaatar. I didn't really speak much Mongolian. It was very strange. There was no English Mongolian dictionaries at that time.
So that time it's quite different Ulaanbaatar compared to now.
Yes, if you
hardly any cars in a
very few cars. I saw horses on Sukbata Square, which is quite rare. And the Genghis Khan statue wasn't there. And everything. It was the old. And so I was very, very lucky, and through the artist, I had a translator whose English wasn't that brilliant, but Migma, who I have to thank very much, he introduced me to Tumen Ek Ensemble. So I hung out with them for a little while, and I met Gerrit Salt, who was their hөөmeyч, and then he contacted his brother-in-law in Hovd, and he said, this man's going to fly across, meet him, and help him out and take him to Chandamansom, where he knows of a teacher. And so I flew internally which was quite amazing in Miat X-era flop planes, which was quite dangerous. I landed at Hovd airport. There were just 3 Westerners on that plane, mainly Mongolians. And I looked around and no one was there. And then eventually I saw this guy. And eventually I knew it had to be him. He was quite shy, but Buryat is his name. And he was the brother-in-law of Khoomich Gerasalt. And then I stayed with him for a little while on the Buoyant Gull. Just outside Hovd, which was great. I met Sengadorj, the late Sengadorj, a wonderful hөөmeyç, who was the hөөmeyç at Hovd Theatre. And he was Tomak a few years. He was the elder of hөөmeyçing, and not then. And then I rode on the back of a motorbike all the way to Chandamanson. That was hard.
I don't know how far is it.
It took 2 days because we ran out of time because my friend Buryat was stopping at people he knew, having some idag, having some shimmy idag. And then we got stuck around Harder Snor where there's loads of sand, and so we had to push. Then the motorbike broke down. So we had to fix. So we had to sleep overnight.
I think empty place. I mean,
no, we didn't see anybody forever. For half a day, we didn't see anybody. And then eventually, I got ill. I got mosquito bites, and eventually I got round Chandamanson, or just outside Chandamanson, where I was introduced to Khoomich Д.Цэрэндаваа, and he was the first person who I heard in England in 1988.
So you saw him in flesh.
I saw him in the flesh. I saw him in 1988 in England, and then 5 years later, I saw him, and he was the person who was going to teach me. It was an amazing, magical thing, and so I stayed in his ger for 3 weeks, nearly a month, and had lessons. And Sargon Socks, his wife, was wonderful, and they looked after me. It was pretty much a culture shock for me. I wasn't at that time. It was just after communism, and so things were sort of okay. Not got too difficult until the mid-90s, and they fed me. And I had Д.Цэрэндаваа had been to England, and he had been to the USA as well. Even though he's a herdsman and an amateur singer, he has the tradition within him, and that was recognised by the Mongolian musicologist Badra, and so that's why he went. So then Carol Pegg brought him across to the UK, but with professional musicians. But he's a Malchin. He was a
pure talent, basically.
Yeah, he was a zохиогч for the Negdel in the communist times. But he's great, and he gave me lessons. It was very difficult. I'd already, by that time, learned how to sort of sing overtones. But there's this quality of sound, this compressed sound, which was very, very difficult to do. So he gave me lessons. Some of it was very difficult. Some of it was okay. And so I had lessons most days. And I was so lucky. They made felt iski. And so we spent 3 days fetching water, and then they were rolling it up. And then there was a haircutting ceremony, and I was so lucky. Obviously, this was just by chance, and there was a nardam.
So all those events had their throat singing performances.
In Chandamanson at that time, if you'd asked most Mongolians, Chandamanson and Hovdaimak was where most hөөmeyç were. Although in Övs and in Bayanolgi, they are. But it was less sort of promoted because historically, that's where, like Sundui, who was a very, very famous hөөmeyç, he came across and started playing in the National Theatre in the 1960s and 1970s. So that's where there became a strong tradition. So most of the professional singers at one time would have been learnt by themselves, like Д.Цэрэндаваа really taught himself. He would have heard lots of other singers, including Sundui, and then some of them will go and become professionals. So I had lessons, and he wrote something down in lowercase Mongolian script. I had no idea what it meant. This was to do with practicing and trying to get this compressed quality of sound. Shahalt was one of the words that he used. In 5 years' time, he might be okay.
He wrote
this. I got it translated in the capital, and I went, oh no. But he's right. It takes time to get you have to have really good breath control, good strength, and you really need to open up your muscles but have them strong in your throat, then have this little compression. And so that takes time, and I have to do it. The older you get, you have to train even more. It's harder and harder and harder.
It's like a human body is trying to adapt.
You need to. Sometimes Tsäрэндаваа said it's like you need to train for Khoomii like you train for a sport. And it's right. If you're a professional singer, you want to do a lot of performing, you have to warm up and you have to train. And you don't want to sing all the time because you just get too tired. You know, when Tumanek used to play and a lot of other early groups, they would maybe have a couple of numbers with Khoomii, but then they'll have a modern her solo. That's changed with the bands today that are around. And so I was so blessed. And at the Nardum, Tsäрэндаваа asked me to sing I used to call it my Angli Khoomii, mini Angli Khoomii,
okay.
to try and differentiate it. And so he got me to sing, so I sang my mini Angli Khoomii at the Chandaman Sum Nardum, which was right in the place where the birth of it. It was, in English, there's an expression, sending coals to Newcastle. Newcastle was where they had loads of mines for coals. So it's doing Khoomii in the place where Khoomii is
just like that.
It was an honour, but quite embarrassing at the same time. But Tsäрэндаваа looked after me. He was great. We drove back in his lorry to Hovd, and then I stayed again with Budiat, and I flew back, and I spent some time in Ulaanbaatar, and I met the Chinggis Khan group that time, and also I met Ghana and Sarah. You know Sarah. They were just starting then, and they were a couple at that time. And I met them in the Lenin Bar. No one knows. I don't know if you know where the Lenin Bar
Lenin
was.
Bar,
There's a lot of people who've got no idea because it's no longer.
It's no longer there.
It's no longer. And
that was, I think, one of the first nightclub or something.
It must have been.
Something.
And so we went back to their flat, and we all got rather drunk. But it was very good to meet him because he had some experience of Western music, and he was a very interesting man. And Sarah was wanting to learn more more long song, to incorporate into her music, pop singing music. And then I thought I would, then I was at Tumanek, and I bought lots of different instruments. So I bought a moranhur, a tovshor, a yatag. I saw a yatag in a second-hand junk shop. Cost me $30. It was slightly broken. And then what else did I buy? A doven chiktaihur and a huchir as well. And I got them all on the Aeroflot plane back. I was very lucky because there was another Mongolian ensemble. I can't remember the name of them now, and they were going to Belgium. And so I just put it all with them.
With the instrument altogether, kind of.
In those days, you could just carry as much back. Nowadays, you couldn't do it.
I see.
Before I went back, I wanted to return to Mongolia, and so I contacted them. At Tumanek, there was the Ministry of Culture and Recreation, and there was one of the managers there, and he managed through the Ministry of Culture to get an invitation for me and a group to tour Mongolia the next year. And I managed to get some funding from the British Council and the Arts Council. It was quite difficult because there was no British Council in Mongolia at that time.
But no British Embassy.
There's the British Embassy, but not the British Council. That's the more arts part of it. But I managed to get some money, so a group of us went to Mongolia, and we were the first British group. We toured Mongolia, so we played at the Rainbow Club, which was a nightclub, a big nightclub, and there was Hurt, you know the band, Hurt. They were playing there, and they were quite young, playing, and so they were on last, but we supported them.
I see.
It was so amazing, and then we then toured. We went to Bayernhonger, and we played concerts there. We went to...
There's a British band.
This was me, a singer who was Welsh and played the violin. There was Graham, who played piano and drums. There was Viv, who was a singer, but she was married to a Turkish man, so she could sing Turkish songs. And then we had a photographer who played didgeridoo.
Okay.
And then it's all filmed. And then Gerrit Solk, the hөөmeyч, he came with us. So we also went to Harahorn, and we did a concert there. And at the same evening, His Holiness the Dalai Lama flew in. And he gave a talk at the Harahorn for all the Mongolians. It was amazing.
Wow!
And we were so
auspicious there.
Very auspicious. And they put him all up high. And then there was a whole fuss, and he wanted to go the same level as all the people. That says something about him. He didn't want to be up there. He wanted to see
the same level.
Yeah. That is just so good. And then we went to Altai and played in the theatre in Altai.
So is it a kind of Western kind of music?
We played very different music. So some of it was improvised. There was some Turkish music. There was some Welsh music. There was our own music. I did some Khoomii.
I see.
There's an interesting clip on our YouTube of me in 1993 in Bainhonga. There was a wrestling match, and we played after the wrestling match. And if you ever see that clip, you will hear the reaction. I was trying to do some traditional Mongolian. We played with Gerrit Solk, and he did some solos. Then we went to Chandamanson, so Gerrit Solk could go back to where he was born and did concerts. And we had a lovely concert in the small village, Chandamanson little cultural centre. And then we had the mayor. We had a big banquet. Not banquet. We had an outdoor banquet. We had hōhog. Was it hōhog? Yeah.
Hōhog, yeah.
Hōhog, not bodsok, but hōhog.
Not bodsok.
Yeah, but hōhog. And a toast, 20 people. Imagine 20 people toasting vodka.
20 shots.
Then we went to Howd, and we did a lovely concert in Howd Theatre and with Gerrit Solk. He stayed, and then we went to өлgий and played in the өлgий Theatre and flew back. So we toured in a bus.
Wow.
18 of us, the whole of Mongolia, basically. And then I
1993?
1994, that was.
1994, year after.
And the year after. And then I stayed, and I did some recording in Ganden Monastery for Hambalam Choyjams, because there were some old monks who still remembered some of their chanting when it was all banned, and they were novices, they were young at the time. And so I recorded these for Hambalam Choyjams and Ganden, and also the Tibet Foundation, who had a Mongolian project. And then they have copies. It turns out that some of these recordings are very, very important because those people are no longer alive now. So they were old, but young in the 40s or the 30s, you know. I was very lucky. And then I went back, and I wanted to learn more, so I came back again in 97 as well. We had another tour around Mongolia, but that was just and I had some more lessons. And then I started, Д.Цэрэндаваа then said it's okay for me to teach the basics.
For the other people.
Of Khoomii for other people.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And that I started
so you got the blessing.
Yeah, and Gerrit Solk as well. You know, I still need to practice. I just teach the basics of Khoomii, which I've been doing for many years. We brought Д.Цэрэндаваа across. We tried to get funding for him for many years, but we couldn't get it. So me and my partner Candida, we paid our own money in 2002. We brought him across, and he toured some of England, Ireland, France, and Scotland. Which was very successful. So he earned some money. He was very, very happy. I felt honoured to honour him for teaching me. And so it was very good. And we played together. We taught him an Irish tune to sing in Khoomii and the Scottish tune to sing in Khoomii, which we tried to do together. And he gave workshops as well. And then he earned enough money for a new ger for his eldest son, who's a real Malchin. He's the other son, who was younger, Sotkumbai or Sogo. He's now a professional hөөmeyч. He went to college and university in Ulaanbaatar, and he tours around the world. And his youngest son, who had only hadn't even been born in '93, he was in '94. He's now a great hөөmeyч as well.
Oh wow, the tradition is going on, yeah.
well, Tsäрэндаваа wants the tradition to go on within his family, and you know, and in Chandomansum they want the tradition. However, you know, in the 90s, they started teaching at the university, and so anybody could learn Khoomii. So nowadays, if you look at hөөсдүүлэн, the very good group, hөөсдүүлэн, most of them won't come from that area. They will, and they will be all professional musicians. They learn how to read and write music. And I remember when we organised the Khoomii conference, I think it was in 2012, I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, sometime,
hөөсдүүлэн were there, and Tsäрэндаваа was there, and Carol Pegg, and I gave a talk. And it was quite interesting hearing about how Tsäрэндаваа was doing, from his point of view, very traditional things. hөөсdүүлэн, who are great musicians, and with a leader and arranger who was a composer. Arimbold, that's it. He wanted to put more of musicality that's more Western and harmony. And there was an interesting thought about, are we going away from what the tradition was? But they want to express themselves as well. So it's always, as people either improve or have other ideas, tradition always changes. So and then if you listen to the Who, you know,
completely.
They're completely different because they've actually sort of dug into the heavy metal and the death metal community around the world, and they're so successful because of their really good marketing. Whereas hөөсdүүлэн are fantastic, but they're not as successful because it's very hard sometimes in the music business. You have a niche, you know. There was Ojuunlag as well. Before them, who were another interesting, more folky with a drum kit group. And I remember my good friend Anuma, and she was trying to get them across, and it's quite difficult. So the Who have managed to break that, and good for them because it gets a lot more people interested in Mongolia. But it's quite away from traditional, inverted commas, at the time when I was in Mongolia in 1993.
I guess that all traditional Khoomii is a quite rich resource of you can change every day. That's the richness of the tradition.
Even let's say even before, like with Sundui, or even before Sundui, was there a performative tradition? It wouldn't have been on the stage. It would have been maybe sung in a gare, or maybe, and it's very hard to know. It was when the red tents in communism were first, which was the cultural tents, came along, that then maybe in Chandomansum, or there was a film called Mane Aglu, which was in which a composer had heard about Khoomii because he happened to be in Hovd. And so he does a very Western version of Altai Magtal with a choir, Mongolian but Western choir. And at the end, there's somebody, maybe Chimendorj or another Khoomii singer, singing some Khoomii. And that's where I guess most Mongolians who weren't from these areas might have heard Khoomii from this film. I think the film was 1954, 1956.
I see.
Then it got in Hovd theatre, and then how do you perform this type of singing? And so that has developed. So what is authentic Khoomii? It's always changing. You know, may I say
that.
It's good to know and research
where
it comes from.
As I said and earlier in our conversation, you are now one of the renowned researchers of Khoomii. So it's very interesting to hear, you know, all these connections and changes and things. You know,
I'm not an academic per se. I play and I do concerts and I earn my living with doing different projects with music and using music in lots of different ways and teaching Khoomii. I teach at the SOAS summer school every year. And there are other like Carol Pegg and Johanny Curtet, a French musicologist. He is a really important people. If you read French, then you're going to get to know. He's done lots and lots and lots of research, got a fantastic paper. And that's where, you know, I learn about lots of things from them. There's been a lot more research done.
So when you start 1993, when you come
Yeah,
to the Mongolian,
yeah.
did you have any kind of manual or book about Khoomii in English?
No,
Or you just
there's
came
there's
in?
nothing.
So how did you learn all these different techniques? Did you start naming it in your, then you found out it's...
So then Tsäрэндаваа would have I would write down words. So he might say, lesson 1 in his bad English, and it might be first lesson I had to do was shahalt, or shahaltai, which is pressure or squeezing, and he was just pointing. So I'd write shahalt. I didn't know what it meant. Later on, I would find out. And then he would say, what was the next one? A dandelak, which I don't think is a word. And that's just an exercise where you do the compressing and do li la 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 la.
Dandela, okay, maybe like just the sound of it.
Yeah, it's you know, it's I didn't know. And then Khoomii, he taught me Taganine Khoomii, and that's palatal Khoomii. And then I started learning about the rest. At the same time, there's the late Trang Quang Hai, and he is from Vietnam but was in France. And he made a film called The Song of Harmonics. And in 1990, my sister who lived in Paris said, there's this strange film about the singing you're trying to do. So I went to Paris and saw the premiere of that. And in there was more information. So I was gradually getting more information from various different sources. And then there was, then also on Carol Pegg's cassette, there was an explanation of various different types of Khoomii, Hamarin Khoomii, Taganai Khoomii, Bagugurzin Khoomii. Yeah. And then there's a lower style which Tsäрэндаваа doesn't do, Hahira Khoomii. But I started hearing that because there was another fantastic singer, the brother of Geertsoldt, Gambold. And Gambold, he's no longer alive as well, was fantastic hөөmeyч. His melodies were brilliant. And so on that film of Trang Quang Hai, there was him doing Hahira. And so I started learning more and more. There wasn't the only person in English for about Mongolian Khoomii was Carol Pegg, who wrote a paper called Concepts of Mongolian Khoomii. But it was hard for me to get because I wasn't an academic. It was through. It was if you're an academic, you could get it through it. But I did get copies of that eventually. Yeah, so
you just follow your will, and
I wanted to learn more and more and more and more and more.
Gosh, it's a fascinating story.
Thank you. Yeah. And I just loved it, and I was just blessed to be able to be in Mongolia at that moment of change.
Do you think it's more like a muscle control thing, or is it you have to have a special ability to do that? Because when 2012, you know, when you on embassy organized that Khoomii things, I did ask Mr. Tsäрэндаваа.
Oh yeah.
Because you know, lots of Mongolians said only Chandman or only Mongolian people can do.
Yeah.
No, not Western people. You know, it's hard for them and whatever. So I asked him, does Michael do this truly? Oh yeah. It's just you need to practice. That's what he said.
Second word, so lesson 1. So he learned 2 words quite quickly in English. 1, practice. Other one, difficult. And so you have to practice. And part of it is muscle control. Part of it is strength here for breath control and support. And part of it is using your tongue in a very particular way. And the most important thing is sonsok, is listening.
Listening, okay.
Listening, because you can do all of those, and if you can't hear what you need to hear, so when anybody can do Khoomii if they want to. Like anybody could I don't know, learn how to sing opera, like the amazing Mongolian opera singers, if they want to. You do need to have training. Now, I've had some training, but not lots of training. So what Tsäréndavaa said is I learned Khoomii in the ger. So I'm a gerin hөөmeyч. Not at the university. So I'm more like a country singer, as opposed to if you hear some of the really professional hөөmийч nowadays, they have a very particular style, and so I'm at a certain level, is what I would say.
So you said you did the first My English Khoomii, or you said
A mini Angli hөөmii.
Mini Angli Khoomii.
Yeah,
Can you do that now?
So this will be without the constriction. So I'm very nasal. But I couldn't do it as good then. But to sing more Mongolian hөөmii, instead of going, you need to have your voice like that. So that's where the muscle control is. I should be warmed up. Sorry about this. Holy la 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 la. So you got this compression in your voice as opposed to your voice like that, and that is just a muscle control. Could you hear that?
Because every Mongolians, I guess, if you go in countryside, or I don't know, in a city, when they heard Khoomii, for example, I grew up in a steppe area.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
So when I heard Khoomii on the radio, maybe I watched it on the TV. Obviously, I was fascinated.
Yeah, of course.
Then when when you were herding animals, you try yourself.
Did you?
Yeah, and then I kind of got a little tune of it, but I never made I can't control it, but I can make a sound, not tune.
Yeah. So So. Did you hear that melody?
Yeah.
So that's controlling
the
the melody of a hөөmii. So that's a strange version of Dorvanol, one of the versions of Dorvanol. And so that is just by listening.
Is it?
To a certain extent.
Then you have kind of learn how to control your tongue and mouth.
I'll do what you do. So that's beginning of Dorvanastayalun.
Yeah.
So this is in the tagnai technique. Some people will do it like this as well. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. The main, you can do the same melody, but you need to do it with this voice. So that gets you into, if you're doing a Mongolian melody with this compression, and I'm doing it in this style, for me that's tagnai hөөmii.
That's tagnai hөөmii, harkhra hөөmii.
So you can do that as well. I'm self-taught at Hahira. Д.Цэрэндаваа doesn't do Hahira, so I've just tried to teach it myself.
Wow, that's fascinating how much you have learned. And so now, basically, this is your life, isn't it, Khoomii?
Yeah, well, hөөmii is part of my life.
I mean,
music and sound.
Music, okay.
Yeah.
So, because previously you told me what you do is teaching sound bath, yeah? So this is the part of the Khoomii also you support what you do, teach.
In the UK, the music business, it's very hard to earn a lot of living. Everyone knows that if you're a musician. If you're a pop star, rock star, you've got a chance.
But still, need to be in that level.
Yeah,
otherwise,
level.
You will be just performing.
So I do work sometimes with special education needs and disabled people through another organisation, and I've learned that things like Tibetan singing bowls,
they're making noise. And,
also harang gong, and also overtone singing or Khoomii sometimes really help them. It's very hard to know. It's not a science. It's an art. And like I remember with, there was a Down syndrome boy, and they're all in a circle, and I was doing things, and then I sang some Khoomii, and he came up to me and hugged me. Why? Why did he do that? He had never heard it before. So something connected with him. So sound is a wonderful mystery. However, sometimes these incredible things happen. And so what me and my partner Canada do, we might have an evening where we will have singing bowls, gongs, other instruments, and lead through like a sound meditation. And we would bathe, cover people in sound. And overtone singing, Khoomii, Canada also, she does hahira as well. Not many women do hahira. And then gongs and singing bowls and some flutes. And you go on a whole journey with sound, and at the end you make sure that everybody's fine and calm. And that's called like a sound journey or a sound bath. And many sounds we use, and Khoomii and overtone singing is one of the sounds that we would use in that.
So I guess I can find the information on your website.
Yes, our website is very long, www.soundtransformations.co.uk. I'm still finishing. To me, it's like a resource for me. I'm using a website as opposed to just one page, but that's just the way I am with it all.
So also, seems also you give a talk about Khoomii or about music to universities? Or
yeah, well, I do. The Royal Holloway College once a year invite me, and I give a lecture about Khoomii, and then I do a little practical workshop at the School of Orient and African Studies once a year. I do the summer school, and then I then would sometimes organise my own workshops with various people, but also I use Khoomii at the moment. I'm going to be next week. I go to China.
Oh wow!
And I'm involved in a dance project called Samsara, and there's a Chinese dancer and a dancer who lives in Leicester in the UK, and he's from India, and they came together and they created a piece of dance. And there's me, there's Bebe Wang, who's a Chinese percussionist, and Nikki Wells, who's a wonderful singer and composer. And we played at Sadler's Wells last year, and we also played at the Edinburgh Festival last year. And so we wanted to go to China, but we couldn't because of the pandemic. So this is the first chance for us. So we're going to be going to 4 or 5 different cities.
Oh wow! How long will it?
So about 2.5, 3 weeks. And
tour around China.
Tour around Shanghai and then Guangzhou and a few other places. So that'd be very interesting. So sometimes it gets sometimes people hear about me, and so I'm on some films as well. I do a bit of Khoomii, but mainly overtone singing on Golden Compass and a few of the David Attenborough programs as well. So sometimes I get work like that. So some people love to use it as colour in some ways. And which it does have a wonderful colour. It has a real atmosphere to it as well.
Yeah, I think there are very few people don't like Khoomii. I know there's some. For example, one of the Mongolian performed the Britain's Got Talent.
Oh yes,
David didn't like it.
It's how you approach it. So just personally, I don't like any of those shows because it's all about judgment, and I'm not. And it's very easy because it's so different to say, oh, that's a bit odd. And I remember somebody told me about that because it is quite different. When in Tuva they do Khoomii, which is Khoomii as well, and there's a famous group called Hunho Tu. And they've been touring for 30 years. And when they first went to the United States, There was a very famous guitarist who's no longer alive and composer called Frank Zappa. And he said, don't worry about these unusual sounds. It's amazing. So it depends how it's told. So if you're in a talent competition and it's a bit odd, it's very easy for the judges to say, oh, that's a bit weird. You know, they had, who was another hөөmийч, who was in the German... Hosso. He's a fantastic hөөmийч.
He's fantastic. Yeah.
He did a brilliant version of Brilliant Girl, really full on, and then he did a Western, he did Amazing Grace. And I think he did quite well.
Yeah, he did
because the way,
semi-finalist.
the way he presented it was in quite a good way that was a bit similar. But if people have asked me, haven't you been on Britain's Got Talent? I said, I don't want to go. I don't want competition. I like to express myself. That's just the way I am. Yeah.
So do you have your own students, or is it?
So I have some students. Last summer I did SOAS. I was at SOAS, and I had, some people come for the weekend and that's it, and it's just like they want to learn about it. But there's one particular student, and he is really into it. So he came to my house. I live in outside London now, and so he's getting the beginning of the compression. Now I'm teaching him melody. So I recorded some melodies for him to sing, and he's going to practice away. Then he'll get in contact with me, and we'll hear how he goes. And so he, if he wants to be, will be really good. You've got to want to be, otherwise you won't be.
I can see your will. It's there's a distance and lots of. You don't know the language, but you got there, you learned it.
I was lucky in some ways because Khoomii, when you're singing it melodically, has no language.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're singing Altai Magtal, you have to know the language, which you can do in the quality of style. Or Д.Цэрэндаваа has created a style of Khoomii, hosmoljin Khoomii, which is combination, where he would imagine you drone your voice, but you're singing... I don't know, Dorvan Nastai Haloon, but the harmonics come out as you're singing the drone of the voice. That is an incredibly difficult thing to do. I wouldn't attempt to even begin to do that.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work, and I guess you're not intentionally promoting Mongolia, but whatever you do.
Oh, I do. Like today in the rehearsal, I was explaining about when I first saw a sheep being killed outside the gare to one of the other people who are in the rehearsal, and because I've seen it real life, and so I know it, and he was going, oh wow, that's amazing. So because I'm very lucky to have seen all those things, I can share, and that's what I do. I'm very happy.
Because obviously when they hear about Khoomii, I guess they will ask questions. Then when you talk the story, it's all about Mongolia. When you're in Mongolia,
it's lovely to put Mongolia in a cultural place. Like most people would say yurt, but it's really ger. And so I try and correct those people. Most people say Genghis Khan as opposed to Chinggis Khan. So I will correct people. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for coming along. And
take care, man. Thank you.